So, I've been asked this question about how I go about designing screens to be responsive and work on different devices, and not so much, how do I come up with these ideas of the design, but what's the strategy behind choosing what size screen to design for? And then after you do that design, how do you carry out that in development? And the truth of the matter is, it really depends. And as much as I hate saying that and giving that answer, it's really true. In my experience, I mean, the strategy about how I go about designing specific screen sizes for whatever the project is really varies on the project itself. If it needs to be a mobile responsive or a mobile first, I'm sorry, I should say, design, then you're really gonna think, mobile first. All right, well, let's go through and create this design for mobile, and then from there typically what I would do is then take that and see, okay, how can I change this if I make the screen larger. But what I like to do, instead of going in small increments from the very beginning, going from small to a little larger to a little larger and then to like a desktop size, what I'll do is I'll take that mobile size and jump right to the desktop size of it, because it really helps me just get an idea of the difference between the two. So you've got like the extremes at that point, and then what I like to do is think through the design in my mind and say to myself, okay, so if this were shrinking or expanding, where would this layout break? And I mean, you have to be creative, and you kind of learn this from doing it after a while, but you kind of get a sense of where things could break. So from there, if I think that, all right, if we get to this point, it's gonna break, or this needs to break, then if I have the time, obviously, I'll go ahead and I'll do that screen as well. Time also does play a factor on this, because you can't create 7 different versions of a design when the design is 100 pages, and you've got a short time period that this has got to be done in. So typically that's what I'll do, and I'll do the inverse as well. So I'll do like the desktop size first if it's an application or a website that's really going to be used on a desktop primarily. And then I'll say, all right, well, let me take this, and I know it needs to be responsive. So I'll try and take all the elements that I have and turn it into a mobile design. So I want to keep a lot of the same elements, but things get moved around, you have to reposition it, you got to design it for mobile. And then from there, I'll do the same thing and say, all right, well, I think it could end up breaking here, here, and here, just because of my experience of working with code and seeing how the design actually functions once it's been developed. And from there, I'll go ahead and design out those individual screens. So typically what I will do, though, instead of just picking an arbitrary number for the width of the screen, I will go ahead and I will use, the width of devices. And I mean, I'm an Apple fan, nothing against Android, but Apple's just what I use most of the time. So that's what I will pick when I am designing the screens, because if I did want to test it, well, my device is Apple, so if I design it for the screen resolution that I have, it's going to look the best. And if it's a personal project, honestly, that's really what I would care about, because it's for me, so that's what I would do. But with that being said, I would do like an iPhone size. Always the smallest iPhone is what I want to try and get down to, because I'm not going to support anything smaller than that, but that's the size I want to get down to. It's 375 pixels by 667 pixels, and then I'll pick other devices all the way up to like a large desktop. Again, this is dependent on time and if the layout requires it. And in between there, I'll pick things like iPad, maybe a larger phone, a smaller computer, and just make sure it works on a lot of those. So that's pretty much what I do. It's dependent on the project, it's dependent on the time, and it's dependent on whether or not I believe that the design could break at a certain point and have an issue. So now that I've gone through all of that, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the computer because there's something I want to show you real quick, actually, that I was super excited about. I ended up launching it. I did like a soft launch of it a few days ago. Well, by now it was like a couple weeks ago. It was right around Thanksgiving that I actually launched it. But I redid my personal website. So not the ZacharyRNewton.com, but the ZacharyNewton.me website. And I'm going to show you, we're going to look back at how I designed it. And it's a simple site. It's extremely simple. It's one page. Honestly, right now it's one page. But I want to show you what I did because I had the time and I wanted to make sure that the design would work on multiple different screen sizes. And then I'm going to show you the website and I'm going to explain to you how I coded it, because how I coded it is fairly simple compared to what you would think if I gave you 10 different designs for different screen sizes. You might think, okay, well, we need to do one CSS for each one of these screen designs, and that's not the case. It's very simple. So let's go ahead and jump into the computer and I will show you. Alright guys, so this is the initial iteration of the site that I was thinking about doing. Now for this project I started off on a desktop size because this is something that's really for me, and the other people that are probably going to be looking at it are other professionals, and because of that, the desktop is the screen that's going to be used the most, in my opinion. Even though mobile is going to be used a lot, so it's still a priority, but I wanted to start off on the desktop size for this one. So this is initially what I was thinking. It was really going to be text-based on the left, and you'd have a lot to read about me, and not that you would care, but you would be able to read it. And on the right, I was thinking about having a video. And so I'm just going to say this idea of the video has stayed persistent throughout, but I did, when I got to development, decided to cut the video and just keep it as an image for now because I just honestly don't have time to record the video at the moment. Hopefully I do soon, and in which case I'll turn it into some sort of video most likely. But I didn't even like reading all this about myself, and I didn't even want to say most of this anyways, so I decided to go ahead and try and change things up and simplify everything. So I'm going to go through the other iterations I had. This is the next thing I was thinking about. I just wanted to cut out all that text and see how that felt, and I did like it, and I wanted to simplify the social accounts, or just the ways that you could contact me as well, because I don't really even use most of them, honestly. The only ones I use are like Instagram and Twitter, and I'm not really ever on them either. So I figured I would limit them to the ones that I'm actually present on, which is Instagram and Twitter, and just cut out all the other bull crap. So this is what I'm thinking for the navigation, and I don't have any other pages for right now, so this is kind of just planning for the future. But I do like it, and I'm starting to like this a little more. We reduce the size of this. I'm going to continue on to the next version. So here we get into the next version, and I'm thinking about, all right, well, let's remove all those social icons. And then what I'm thinking here is we can do like this timeline kind of thing. And so looking through this, I like it, but it doesn't feel too much like a timeline, just like a bunch of cards with some random dot out to the side. And I didn't like how centered everything is still here. But this is what I did in place of the social icons. So the idea here is that by clicking this, you would have the different social accounts pop up. And I'll show you that a little later, maybe in the development. But let's jump onto the next screen real quick. And I went through these really quick, just like one after the other. I did this whole thing in probably like 10 minutes. But I cleaned it up afterwards on the final pages. But anyways, this was the next iteration. So as I said before, this didn't feel connected. So I kind of used this line to connect it and make it feel more like a timeline. And I think that helped a lot. So continuing on to the next screen, this is where I started to left align all the text, and I think that it helped a good amount. But let's jump over to the next screen. it didn't feel like it was personalized enough. So I wanted to shorten the text to make it quicker to read. I wanted to make sure I said my name on here and said who I was. And then I still kept this idea of the project card timeline. I think it worked well. Let's jump on to the next one over here. And now you can kind of see this is what it looks like. I just cleaned it up a little bit, and then I designed it out a little more so you could kind of see how this would function, how it just the left panel scrolls when it's like this, and then I don't think I have that connected anyways. So, but when you would click this, that would pop up. Let's see, was there another one? Yes, there's another one. So I wanted to add a little bit more to this. So I added this just random shape in the background that I made, just to kind of, give you some lines to look at. I don't know. I like it, honestly. I think it adds a little something. It's very subtle, but I think it's neat. So that's what I went through. And if we come over here, this is the final version of that page. And this is where I actually think this is all prototyped out here. So this still scrolls like you saw. Again, this is for the future, so there's nothing really behind it. I flipped this icon color because on any other instance other than this one, the white's not going to be as easy to see. So when you click it, basically these things are going to pop out like that. And then you can see my Instagram, my YouTube, and my email. And that's all I really wanted to show. So that's what I did for the desktop. And then I'll show you, I basically created these different versions. So this is for a large computer screen. This is for a normal like 1280 by 800 pixel screen. This here, if you come down, then we've got the iPad Pro, because that's another one it's a large screen, but it's a completely different device, and I wanted to switch it up. So here you don't really see too much of a change between these two, other than the fact that they're just kind of responsive, and the width isn't fixed, so it moves dependent on the width of the screen. But then once you get down to here, you see, okay, so this still continues to shrink in width, but then once we get to something like this, you see it breaks, and you have this single single column scrolling area, and I liked that. And so if you come down even farther, I'll do the iPhone X, and then this is what I had. And so with the iPhone X, it's 375 pixels wide, which is the exact same width as the smallest iPhone. So I didn't need to worry about going any smaller anyways. But this is what I ended up coming up with for this. But I didn't just jump to these either. I also went through all of these iterations on, all right, well, how would I want this to look like when it got down to those screen sizes? And I'll show you. This was my initial thought on the, I think this was just a smaller browser. So this one was pretty simple. There was nothing too complicated about that, but I did go through a few different ideas that came to my mind. Well, did I want this to shrink? Did I want this to go over top of everything? But then I ended up keeping it simple, which I think turned out the best. And then we get to the iPad, and this is kind of what I was thinking for the iPad at first, but it does not translate well at all, so I just gave up on that quick and switched over to this. And then I did one in landscape for the iPad Pro, and I think that worked. So those are pretty much the ones I went with. And then for the mobile device, I went through a few iterations of, how do I want to order this? Do I want the video first? Do I want this text first? And then ultimately I decided on having the text up top, and then the video, which is, keep in mind, is now just an image. Sorry, I feel like I'm losing my voice right now, but that's really what I went with. And then again, I just took it over here and I cleaned it up. So another thing I did, which I think is neat, is I did a 404 page that basically has that same call to action on it. However, depending on how you get to this page will determine what shows up here. So if you get to this page from within my website, say I have a link and it's a broken link in my site, you'll get this page right here where you see go home or go back. And then you'll still have that call to action. And then on mobile, it's very simple. However, if you get to this page from outside of the application, you'll just get this, because I don't want you to go back. I don't want you to leave the website. I want you to go to my homepage. So if there's a broken link coming to my site, this is the page you'll see. So anyways, that's the design. That's what I did. I did all of this for a single page. So it really depends on the time you have and what the design needs. But let me jump over to the code and show you what I did. Well, not the code, but the actual developed site. Show you what I did. So this is the site right here. I've got this text. I've got the image of me. I'm not making this a video right now. I may in the future, like I mentioned. This scrolls how it's supposed to, and I did some cool little hover effects on there, I think. And then over here, you like that? I love this little floating action button that I created here. So this pops out. You got the email, then you got the Instagram and the YouTubes. And if this is on mobile, obviously you can't hover. So I did a lot of programming to make sure that works when you click it, and then it shows everything. So let me take the width of this and shrink it up for you so you can get an idea of what happens here. So you'll see as I shrink this, the whole thing is responsive, but nothing's really breaking. So you saw one thing break there. So that was one media query. And all I did was adjust padding on that, I believe. Yeah. And then as you continue, you'll get to one other media query right here. So this is where the biggest switch is. This is really the primary switch that we're working on. And this is checking to see if the device is in portrait or landscape. And if it's in portrait, we're doing this single column view. If it's in landscape, that's when we give this two column view. So as you come down, this is what it's going to look like on all large portrait devices. And if we shrink this up a little more, there's only one more media query, I believe, which is probably right about here. Yep. And all that did was reduce the either the margin or the padding on either side so that the content stretched to be more full screen, and this will continue shrinking down, responsive, nothing really changed. So all in all, it was a pretty simple site. It's a pretty simple set of media queries. Not too much crazy happened. I mean, you can look at all the code on here. I will leave the link to this site in the description. But even if you go to the CSS, I know this is minimized or minified, whatever the term is. I can't think of it right now, but there's not even that much CSS here. It just looks scary because everything's all super tight and compact. But go ahead. I'll even leave the link to the repository so you can look at that. But go ahead, look through it, see what I did, and you'll understand how this site specifically works. But yeah, that's about it. That's what I wanted to show you right here. I'm super excited about this website, and I've been waiting to show you guys for a little while, so I hope you guys like it. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. I know this stuff is really hard to explain, and I hope you guys were able to learn something from it. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and continue to explain this and my thinking as I go through future projects and I design them with you guys. That way maybe you'll get a little better understanding of, what's going through my mind when I just randomly decide to, all right, I need to make this screen look better on a desktop or look different on a mobile. I'll try and explain that a little bit more and keep that in the back of my mind as we continue doing future projects and or series. So anyways, if this video helped you, like I said, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if you like the content that I'm creating on this channel, head on over to my Patreon account at patreon.com/Zachary R. Newton, where you can help support this channel and help me create better videos every week. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.